happy hour, Batman. I am Father Ben. I'm an Episcopal priest and co-founder of the All Ports Open Network and Apon Games. And on this show, Holy Happy Hour, Batman, I am joined by heroes of the gaming and geek world to talk about life, faith, spirituality, game design philosophy, the latest games that are coming out from them, and whatever else comes up. So tonight we have another really exciting guest returning to the show. Coming back on the program, Spencer Campbell is back, who you know from GilaRPGs, publishing smash hits like Nova and Slayers and the Lumen System. And Spencer's next game, Rune, comes to Kickstarter later this month. Rune is a solo tabletop RPG heavily inspired by the Soulsborne genre of video games, including Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. In Rune, you are a wanderer of the lands of Oberon, I hope I pronounced that right, and the world is dangerous but full of power if you're willing to reach out and take it. So I'm really excited to talk about Rune because the last time Spencer was on this show, we literally were talking about Elden Ring because it was like right in the hype period of Elden Ring, and we talked on the show about what it would take to design a TTRPG based on it on the last episode he was on, and then that happened between now and then, and I'm really excited to talk about that. So we're going to get into that with Spencer here in just a few minutes, so stick around, and we will talk about that. Bring your questions to the chat about Rune if you have any. We'd love to have them tonight. So before we get into the episode fully, we have some huge announcements from Apon Games that I want to talk through real quick. You may know that a game that I wrote, Broken, a tragic romance game, is crowdfunding right now as we speak. We funded the full version of the game, and now we're working to fund our stretch goals still. It's a set of scenarios written by a fabulous group of game designers. We are less than $150 away from fully funding that stretch goal. I can't wait to see the scenarios that those designers create for the game. I think it's going to make the game really awesome to have those. And so like I said, we're less than $150 away from that stretch goal. You can go to bit.ly/brokengame or apongames.itch.io to find Broken. Hey, if you want to play a game of Broken with me, there are 3 $50 reward levels left. You can grab one of those up, swipe one of those up, and play a game of Broken with yours truly, the creator of the game. And we'll do like a custom game. We can basically play whatever kind of scenario you want if you want to do that. So you can find that if you scroll down to the bottom of the campaign, you can find the different reward tiers. But yeah, we've got a little less than 10 days left. We got the 17th is the last full day to back the game, so make sure you go check out Broken. Also, everyone should go check out apongames.com. You can see our beautiful brand new website, and you can sign up to get updates from Apon Games about everything we're doing. Every time we have a release, what we have going on at Apon Games. And if you do that, you'll also receive a 10% off coupon for our new system neutral campaign setting, New Korai City. It's a cyberpunk themed system agnostic campaign setting written by Joshua Wise, my Apon co-founder, and the author of Weeping Cedars, horror audio drama Weeping Cedars, and our game The Hard Lessons. That's apongames.com. Sign up to get email updates from us and about all our new releases, and you get that coupon code. You can also check out patreon.com/allportsopen to get not only New Korai City that way for $5 and up, but you can also get all of our games as they come out. So, all right, that is my little Apon Games news here at the top of the show. And before we bring Spencer on, it is happy hour, and we do have a cocktail recipe up on the screen. And I just saw the question in the chat, which I'm excited to answer. So I wanted to do a Rune inspired cocktail. So my thought process for this was it should be a little hard to drink because I don't know how it could be Soulsborne if it wasn't a little bit intense, a little challenging to drink. So this one's probably going to knock you down a little bit. That's the idea anyway. I called it Try Not to Die because I was trying to come up with a name for it. And I wrote the directions, and at the end of that, sometimes I write a little pithy thing at the end that relates it to a TTRPG product at the end of the cocktail recipe. And on this one, I wrote Try Not to Die, and I was like, oh, that's the name of the cocktail right there, Try Not to Die. So this one is going to be, it is a Sazerac-inspired cocktail. So if you like the Sazerac, a lot of people may not know, but the Sazerac actually started as a cognac cocktail. And Sazerac is actually the brand of cognac that they used for this famous New Orleans cocktail. And then rye basically took over the Sazerac because there was a unavailability of grapes in the cognac region of France where cognac comes from. And so during that period of time, basically Sorry, I'm reading the chat and saw Mosberg said drinking humans could be described as hard, I guess. Yes. Yeah, that might be tough. But yeah, so rye switched over as the primary spirit for the Sazerac. So sometimes people make it with both. So that's basically what I did in this version. So basically what you're going to do for this is you're going to take a sugar cube, put it into, like, if you want to have a glass for stirring that's going to be different than your drinking glass. That's like a little trick for cocktails where you're going to want to do it stirred, not shaken, like the whole James Bond thing. So you're going to want to put a sugar cube into your glass, coat that thing in some, I used fire tincture bitters, which is kind of like a spicy bitters. You could use Peychaud's or something. Find the body of Saint Germain. It's what Mosberg said. Sorry, I can't get over the Saint Germain references. Saint Germain is a spirit that you can buy. It's a liqueur that you can buy. So you're going to want to cover the sugar cube with fire tincture bitters. You're going to want to muddle that up with a muddler or with a wooden spoon or something. To muddle that sugar cube up. And then you're going to add the rest of your ingredients. You're going to add the absinthe, you're going to add the Saint Germain, you're going to add the cognac and the rye, and you're going to add a couple of... Yes, it's also a dead person in addition to being a spirit, yes. So you're going to add the ice to that. You're going to stir it for like about 20 seconds. You really just want to chill it without watering it down too much because this is meant to be a like spirit and liquor forward cocktail. And then you're going to strain pour it into a lowball glass or a coupe glass. And then the garnish is a lemon peel. And so you want to just take our lemon zest. You just want to take that, like peel off a piece of your lemon zest, kind of twist it over the drink to express a little bit of that lemon on top of it. And then rub the edge of your glass with that and then, put it on the edge to garnish. Or you could drop it in to garnish also if you want to. So that is Try Not to Die, my Rune-inspired cocktail recipe. If you try the drink, you always got to let me know if you can. Let me know if you tried it, if you liked it, if it's good. I'd love to hear from you if you give it a try. So that is our cocktail recipe of the week, which means we are ready to go ahead and bring Spencer on the show. So let's go ahead and do that. Spencer, welcome back to Holy Happy Hour, Batman. Oh, I can't hear you for some reason.
I muted myself.
There you go. Hey, let's try again. Spencer, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Yeah.
I love that you prefaced the cocktail by saying I wanted it to be hard to drink. Like that's very, very good.
It's appropriate, right? I did some research on hard to drink cocktails, and then I was like, well, I can't make it so hard to drink that someone's not going to want to drink it too. Otherwise, what am I even doing? So the basically end result of that was strong drinks,
right?
Which I like anyway, and I love the Sazerac. The Zombie's another one. So I saw somebody list Death in the Afternoon. Do you happen to know that cocktail?
I'm not familiar with that one, no.
It's just absinthe and champagne, and I'm like, that doesn't sound hard to drink. That
just sounds weird to me. I mean, I haven't drank for the last 3 years, so I've forgotten a lot of this. But the Sazerac was one of my favorite cocktails back when I did drink. So when you said that this is Sazerac based, I was like, all right. Cool. Spencer probably would have done quite a bit.
There we go.
That's awesome.
I heard that you're a little loud in the feed. I can turn you down. No, you're fine. You don't have to worry about it. I'll turn you down a little bit.
I'm also huge congratulations to you on Broken. This is,
thanks.
I mean, super, super exciting. I feel like last time we talked, between the time that last time you and I talked to now, you have been very busy. You have been firing on all cylinders, which is awesome. Huge congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I have been. I also moved. People might not know this who watch the show. I also moved in that period of time. And yes, it's been crazy. But I'm not the only one. You've had a lot of life changes. You've been very, very busy yourself.
Yeah, I keep busy from time to time. Yeah, got married, visited Korea, still making games nonstop. It's been good. It's been real good.
I sometimes do see your output of games, and I'm and design ideas and what you're working on, and it just blows my mind. I'm I don't know how this person also has a professional career in academia as a psychologist while also designing these games. And for what it's worth, playing video games as well. Like, that's the other thing.
You mentioned that. I forgot that last time we spent so much time talking about Elden Ring last time. Yeah, I managed to carve out a substantial amount of research time playing video games, because so much of my games are inspired by either directly games themselves or the tech that we have in video games that I think fits really well on the tabletop.
Yeah.
So I consider it all research.
Of course. It was really cool for me, I'll be honest, because when I saw you start talking about Rune, I was like really hyped, because you had been on the show and it was when you were in your peak, like, tell me if it's fair to use the word addiction, your Elden Ring addiction, like peak like peak time investment. It was like right around, it was maybe like a couple weeks after the game was out, or like a week even after the game. It was like right around that time when you were on before, and everybody but me was playing it at that point, because I have now since then. I bought it and played it and sunk a bunch of hours into it, but I was like, you and I had this whole conversation about how I felt like I was the only person on the planet not playing it, and we kind of had a little bit of a conversation about like, what on the show, what would it look like to design a TTRPG about that. And then so when I saw that you announced Rune and you were doing it, I was so amped, because I was like, wow, like we talked about that on my show and now here it's happening. And I mean, I've also gotten to like watch some streams of you playtesting, and checked out the what do you call it, quick start guide, or
the quick start playtest stuff that's out there.
Yeah, I want to make sure, speaking of that, actually, I'm gonna link that right now in the chat while we're here talking about this, so people can check out the itch page, where they can download the materials that are out for it right now. But yeah, I mean, so we kind of already have said what the inspiration is for Rune. Do you want to kind of just do another synopsis, talking to us a little bit about what is Rune, where did it come from, et cetera, and then we can dig into the details.
Yeah, the where it came from that's a weird story of just like the osmosis of like a bunch of different things coming together. But the quick sort of like pitch or rundown of what Rune is. Rune is a solo tabletop RPG. Like we've alluded to, heavily inspired by the Souls-like Soulsborne genre. So if you're Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring fan, you'll get similar vibes from this. The game basically, because it's solo, goes back and forth between two modes where you are exploring these realms, kind of very similar to the like different regions or like parts of the city in Bloodborne that you would explore. Through sort of a point crawl exploration format. You get like vibes of almost like choose your own adventure, how you engage with the realm and the exploration. You're learning more about these realms. There's a whole mechanic about lore, which is how much you learn to realm, which can kind of unlock secrets, so it encourages exploration. And then you're gonna fight things. And the game kind of switches to a tactical game where you jump to this 4x4 kind of tight combat grid, and using sort of an enemy AI system where you roll dice to see what the enemy is going to do, and then you roll and program them into your gear. It's this back and forth puzzle as you try to survive pretty terrifying fights as you explore these realms. And so I like to think about it as sort of combining the environmental storytelling stuff that we see in Souls games, where you're kind of figuring out the story or your own interpretation of the story and the world around exploration, combined with a sort of more like a puzzle. I like to think of the combat in Rune as like a puzzle, and you are trying to figure out the best way to deal with that, every fight that you're in. So that's kind of the rundown of Rune, and you do it all by yourself. It's all a solo RPG, so you can kind of take your own pace with how you play out the realms, and there'll be a whole bunch of realms for you to explore. And yeah, that's the pitch.
Yeah, a detail. I'll just say it now before I forget it later, because I wanted to say this. I legitimately, for our viewers, like, this is legit truth I'm saying here. This is not. I was shocked at how fun it is to watch you stream a solo game of this game. Like, I did not think it could be that entertaining to watch someone play a solo like strategy TTRPG with a grid. It's really just like, yeah. So Binary Star Games in the chat says the streams were a joy to watch. It is so true. Like it's just a 4x4 grid, like you said, with like little, and you had like little snake thingies. The one I watched was like little snake monsters on the grid, and like you're just rolling dice to see what they do to you. It was so much fun and like so gripping to be like, oh no, is he gonna die? Is he gonna make it? Is he gonna die? Like, and that's how I knew that it captured the feeling of playing something like Elden Ring, because that's kind of how you feel when you're watching someone play that game or when you're playing it. And yeah, I mean, who knew streaming solo, solo games could be that fun to watch? I didn't, but it really is.
Well, yeah, it's because I love solo RPGs. Like obviously, like solo video games is a whole other thing, right? Like we watch people stream themselves play video games all the time, and that like makes sense to us. And then I think when people think of solo RPGs, understandably, many people will jump to something like a journaling game.
Yeah.
Something where you are like sort of reading prompts, like maybe pulling cards from a deck, responding to them, and sort of telling the story of through sort of a journaling process of a back and forth prompt thing. And that can be really interesting, but also those can be like very intimate and not necessarily something that like other people watching can grasp in the same moment as you. But Rune is, I mean, it tries very openly to be like a video game, to capture that like old Final Fantasy Tactics vibe of like moving figurines on a grid map and seeing if you're gonna be the one to survive. And then you're not getting the same level of prompts in the exploration for you to be directly responding to things, but instead trying to put things together. I remember like one of my first streams where I was playing like a fan-made realm, because there's like 10 realms out there that other people have made that I haven't made, which is really cool because the game's not even out yet.
Yeah.
And Aaron Jolliffe wrote this realm called the Coral Rock, and like these moments where I was starting to understand and put together what I thought the story of Coral Rock was based off of the little like hints that Aaron had put throughout the whole thing was really fun. Yeah. And then like talking about it on Discord later, and him being like, yeah, that's kind of like what I was thinking, and then like it's a little bit different. That's exactly the Souls experience, right? Of like, this is what I think the game is about, but then somebody else might think it's about something totally different.
The environmental storytelling stuff, the fact that that was one of your priorities for designing this, I think is so awesome, because that's definitely one of my favorite things about now. So I should say, Elden Ring is my first, specifically Soulsborne style game. Like that was my first foray personally into that genre. But like other games that do that really well, I think maybe in a slightly more explicit, like more clear detail, like not as opaque as like Elden Ring, is something like a Fallout or something along those lines, where like you find a location, you explore it, and because of the details there, you're like, oh, I think this is what happened here. Like sometimes Fallout does that a little more explicit with like you find like holotapes or whatever you listen to, and but anyway, that's one of my favorite things in video games, is when it has that that kind of exploration, that kind of storytelling. So the fact that you're including that in this is, I think, just really awesome. That's really, really cool.
It's just something that like very much is in line with how I generally like design games. Okay. Where I mention a lot where I design games with holes in them, like because I want the table to fill the holes. And that can come from like looser rules, but it can also come from like, I just don't tend to do a lot of world building in many of my games because I want people to make their own stuff. So the fact that Souls games are like, that's an inherently important part to them works really well with how I think about creating the setting at the table. And so like, yeah, I will have like in my own head, my own canon for all the realms that I create and what's going on there. But that doesn't mean it's the right interpretation or the only interpretation. And I like to leave that breadcrumb trail that might lead you off, but you might be like, actually, I think it's going this way. And that's cool to me. That's exciting to me. I'm always strongly advocated for changing and breaking my games to fit whatever works for you.
So will people will you be interacting with NPCs that you meet, that you actually talk with, that don't try to murder you in your realm?
Yeah, so I've got some ideas for some of my other realms that will have probably some degree of the weirdos that you find in Souls games that are just like cackling to themselves, or just saying real weird things. Like there will be elements of that. It won't be a lot of it just because it is solo and I can't like program. I could either like write a whole script for you to read to yourself, or it's going to be more along the lines of somebody who might like say something to you, but you can't do much in terms of interaction. These NPCs will likely do things where they will give you access or boost your lore stat, the thing that allows you to kind of understand what's going on in the world. Or they actually just realized it might be cool if they decreased your lore if you met like a nefarious NPC who messed with you. That's I gotta write that down real quick.
Yep. We're just doing design here on the fly.
Mean NPC decreases lore. Feels like a real fun thing to do at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The game is still very much in development in terms of some of the core system is there, and then I'm thinking about other ways to maybe enhance or add on to it. I know some folks have asked about like, is there going to be like a hub or something like that, because each of these realms is like a sort of a disparate world that's separate from all of the others, and like would there be factions? And that's an idea that's maybe interesting to me. I don't know if it will find its way into the base game, just because again, I don't know, I can't think at least now how to like in a satisfying way for a solo RPG to get that weird funky NPC interaction sort of thing. But as something that might come later, that could be a fun thing to try and find a way to string together a whole bunch of NPC interactions. Like I feel like it'd be a lot of like if-then statements, like if you've been to this point, then they say this. If you haven't, then they say this. Then it really leans into that like choose your own adventure thing, where you're like flipping to the right page, which was one of like the original intents of the game. Was it was going to be very much like that, where it was going to be each realm was going to be a lot bigger, because you were going to have to be like flipping between pages to read which prompt, so that you wouldn't be spoiled as to like what is at each location. I've since pulled away from that because I don't want to write like 7 choose your own adventure novels for the game, and it just didn't really ultimately mesh with the idea. But the NPC thing is kind of a fun idea. I at least like this idea of a mean NPC.
So in the chat, Aaron SXL, thank you for chatting with us. Aaron says, would love to see what a Souls style quest would look like in Rune. Gotta love a bunch of weird NPCs.
Yeah, I mean, it would be super cool. And this is something that I've seen in like a couple of the realms that I've either like played or just read. I'm trying not to read many of the realms ahead of time, because I want to play them and be surprised by them. But like it's something that we've talked about in the GilaRPGs Discord, of like having like a meaningful side quest or a mini boss or something like that be a thing that gets you access to something that's very crucial to that realm. And so maybe having some sort of strange NPC that you interact with. I won't spoil it for Aaron's realm, Coral Rock, but there is an NPC that you meet to get an item. But it's not like there's a huge degree of like interaction with them, but like they're there, and you acknowledge them and they acknowledge you, and then you fight each other. So yeah, I mean, it's possible. I got to think about it. I got to brew on that.
Yeah. So what other, I'm curious as to like what other elements of Soulsborne style video games were you trying to like, that you knew were essential, that you wanted to try to bring? Because we kind of talked about like environmental storytelling and the really weird, but They really are the weirdest NPCs of any video game I've ever played. Is an Elden Ring. I just like can't get over how strange everything and everyone is in that game. But anyway,
it's very important for everybody to be an exaggerated version of whatever character they're supposed to be, and it's perfect.
Oh my god! But the best NPC of all time has got to be the Turtle Pope. That's got to be the best NPC I've ever seen in a video game. I can't get over the Turtle Pope. Anyway,
truly a lovely being, and I hope no harm ever comes to the Turtle Pope.
Yeah, you can attack him. Do you know this already?
Yeah.
I didn't do it, but someone told me that he just like forgives you the whole time you're killing him, which is really messed up.
Very on brand.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The question is, besides sort of these things, what other elements of those games were you really hoping to design into Rune?
Some of the things that come to mind are things like builds and enemy AI. So like speaking first to enemy AI, a big thing in Souls games is that enemies will telegraph what they're about to do. There's usually some sort of visual or auditory cue about what attack they're going to do. That's why the whole point of fighting a boss in Souls games isn't about getting lucky. I mean, you can, but it's mostly about learning the move sets of enemies and learning when they do things and what it looks like, so that you can more effectively fight it the next time you fight it, the next time you fight it, the next time you fight it. And so to kind of capture that idea of telegraphing the move, the very first thing you do every round in combat is you roll to see what the enemies are doing. So you know what the enemy is going to do. So let's say you're fighting like a skeleton. You would roll a d6 for that skeleton, and then the result of that would tell you which sort of like collection of actions the skeleton is going to do this round. And those actions are usually like moving closer to you or moving to a range that they're good at, dealing some sort of harm to you, blocking incoming harm on their own, or some sort of special move if they're like a necromancer that raises skeletons or something like that. So you know what they're going to do, and now when it's your turn and you roll your dice to see what actions are available to you, you are thinking about, okay, I know that they're getting a little bit closer to me. I know that they're going to do this much harm. What is the ideal way for me to allocate my stamina dice here so that I can make the most of this chance that I have? So that was a really important thing for me to try and capture because combat, I wanted combat to be interesting, and I wanted it to capture that idea of learning and adapting to the scenario where, you're gonna always kind of feel like you're on on your back foot, like backpedaling and trying to figure out the right thing, but it won't feel random. You won't be next to the enemy and then suddenly you just get bombarded with things and there was nothing you can do about it. That's a big thing in the Souls games is they feel unfair, but when you, especially with like bosses, when you learn their move sets, you can see people who do those ridiculous runs where like they never get hit and things like that. Like they're fair. You just have to learn it. Right. And so I tried to capture a similar thing with Rune without it being quite as punishing. You don't have to die 100 times before you learn how to fight something, but there is that idea of trying to figure out what the best thing to do based off of the cues that you get each round in combat.
Now that makes me wonder if you could design a realm where it really was that punishing and you really did have to do it a ton of times before you were successful in. It's gotta be possible, I would think.
Totally. Like you could do something to the point where like the engraved, which is the character in Rune, has a very low amount of health, so you die a lot, but each realm has something called death curse, so some effect that happens when you die. And the death curse in a realm like that could be one that it's not a penalty or like a boon of some kind, such that like you either can start to manipulate what enemies roll when they're determining their moves because you are just learning how they adapt, or you're gaining things like the ability to re-roll your own dice as you are learning how to do things. There's already elements of it's not in the quick start, but it's going to be something that's in the full game where eventually like when you die a lot in a realm, but there's a bunch of like mobs, like no name enemies that you have to get through, like you get really good at killing those enemies and you kind of just like breeze through them. And that'll be something that kind of gets captured in Rune eventually, where you can kind of like basically skip past fights that you've beaten before and you know how to handle these things. Like I'm gonna just go straight to the boss that I need to go fight. And like there's even elements of that in the quick start realm, where to go fight the boss in the quick start realm, if you have a certain amount of lore, so you've experienced the realm a lot, you can skip a bunch of the fights that lead up to it. You can just go fight the boss. And that's there to encourage you to learn, rather than just to head right into every fight and just die and die and die and die. Instead, explore, learn on the realm, and be rewarded for that exploration.
Yeah, so does lore basically work like XP?
It's kind of like it's kind of like XP for the realm specifically. So like it doesn't carry over, it doesn't necessarily like advance your character, but it's almost like a set of keys that you have, and you will occasionally run into literally locked doors, or like metaphorically locked doors at locations that, if you have enough lore, you can engage with things at locations that you wouldn't normally be able to. So
such a cool idea.
You might find like hidden passages that suddenly connect 2 points on the map that you couldn't travel to them before, but you've sort of figured out that there should be a passage here. And
so cool.
It's available. Yeah, exactly. Right. So like, yes, it could literally be like, you now know enough to like get into this locked door, but it could also be lore sometimes is just a thing that allows you to get a bit of the story too. Like sometimes it's just like, here's like a little bit of flavor text, because the flavor text in Souls games is so cool. And again, I'm gonna just keep saying how good of a job Aaron did on his realm, because he did such a good job. Like the flavor text he used was so good that every little bit of lore that I got, I knew mechanically was going to help me in the realm, but like I just wanted it because I wanted to know more.
Ooh, so that's so cool.
I hope people see that, yes, mechanically, lore is there to help you open metaphoric doors that are going to be locked across the realm, but also it's going to be that thing that just makes you go like, oh, this is a really weird place. What an interesting little place that I found myself in. I want to know more.
I love that combination of it being both like mechanically incentivizing but also like narratively incentivizing. It does very much feel to me like that genre, like at least Elden Ring, because that's my real experience with it. But like it feels like the idea that like you find a door to a tunnel or something, but you don't know what's back there, but you can't get to it yet. So you have to like leave, do a bunch of other stuff, and then come back, and then you can find out what was back there and go on to like that. Feels so much to me like that game, like that like the genre, like I love porting that over to like a TTRPG thing where it's like, okay, we know this is here. I know this is here. I really want to know what's back there, but I'm not ready for it yet. So I gotta like mark the map and like plan to come back when I'm ready for it. Or like it could be that in terms of like how hard enemies are too. Like maybe I can't beat this fight yet, so I gotta go, but I'll come back. And actually, in the chat, Aaron says, really appreciated that the quick start incentivized exploring the whole realm before taking on the boss, and nails how Elden Ring makes you fight Margit, get owned, and then go explore for another 10 hours before you come back. That really is. That's it, right? That's that feeling, and like being able to capture that in a TTRPG with the lore, that sounds really, really cool. I love that idea.
My first Souls game that I got really into, like I tried Dark Souls and I did not enjoy it when I first played it. It was too slow for me. I'm the Destiny guy, so I like nonstop action. So like when I was like slow rolling and shield, this is terrible. I don't like this at all. Then I played Bloodborne and I went, this is the one, because Bloodborne is, you have to be far more aggressive in Bloodborne, and like it encourages you to do that.
Right.
But so Bloodborne was my kind of first Souls game, the thing that really got its hooks in me. And I'm not going to spoil it in case anybody hasn't played Bloodborne or anything, but the lore rule in Rune is very heavily influenced by the sort of insight resource that is in Bloodborne. And point in the game where if you get enough of this stuff that essentially that is showing that you've learned about the world, things change, and in a big way. And so that's what I was trying to capture. That's like right there, like there's the mood of Souls games, which is you should explore because you will find the flavor text that's going to tell you about the world. You'll find gear. All that is there in like across like near like just that's the vibe of Souls games. And then Bloodborne had a very clear like mechanical thing for me to lock onto of like, yes. And then there's this very specific thing in Bloodborne that works very well with what I'm going for with having a lore score and suddenly like being able to see things that you couldn't see before. That's a big inspiration for the lore mechanic there as well. I love Bloodborne so much. I think it is like a perfect game.
I've heard that's other people have said similar things to me, like that I should go back and try Bloodborne. I haven't even finished Elden Ring, honestly. So but I was, maybe it was because of this episode coming up or not, I don't know, but I have been thinking like, I should really go back and play more of that. But yeah, I'd love to give Bloodborne a try. So I think you were going to say something about builds too. I want to talk about builds.
Yeah, so another thing that's a big part of the Souls games is figuring out what your build is. Yeah. And there's a lot of obscurity between you trying to figure out what all of your stats and everything means and how it translates, and that's all intentional. There's not that. There's no stats in Rune besides how much health you have and how many dice you roll when you do things, and your lore. And so builds come in the gear that you bring with you. And that's a huge part of Souls games, is figuring out the weapons that you like to play with, because they all play very differently. They create a very different experience depending on if you're using a giant colossal sword and like really slowly swinging, but when you hit, it hits, versus a high speed dex build that's a death by 1,000 cuts versus an arcane build that's all about spells and you're a glass cannon. Those are all the same game if they feel very different. And I wanted to do something similar with Rune, where there's a number of different types of weapons and what's called utility gear. And these things you will find with time as you explore more realms, the gear that works for the sorts of builds that you want. So do you want to do like the high mobility, like poking from a distance sort of thing, then you might want to bring like a spear so that you can kind of like hop around and attack from a range. You're not going to do a lot of damage, but you can kind of keep yourself away from enemies, as opposed to like a great axe where you're going in and just like cleaving everybody in half. And then there's spells and all sorts of things. And then on top of that, whenever you kill a boss in Rune, you get a rune. You get their rune. They're like a source of their power, and those also feed it. Those are sort of like, to use Elden Ring as an example, those are like the talismans. They give you like those small passive bonuses or effects, and so they are there to also point you in the direction of a build. And so my hope is that across these realms, you start to figure out like different play styles that you can play around with, but also then like you can replay the realms with totally different gear, and it will feel different. Yes, like the mystery of the realm has been solved because you've played through it before, but that's the same thing if you've already played Bloodborne before and I decide to use not the threaded cane, which I can't imagine not using the cane because it's the best weapon in Bloodborne. But if I wanted to use like the saw cleaver, I know all the paths in Bloodborne, but I'm using a new weapon and it feels cool. So I'm a similar sort of vibe here with Rune, where you can run through it with like a standard sword and board sort of thing, figure out how the realms go, and then you're like, all right, what happens if I try to not bring a shield and I just bring 2 weapons and I just try and kill things faster than they can kill me? Let me try that. Or what if I tried all magic build? That's something that I like to. I'm hoping to capture with Rune.
That sounds really challenging from a like balancing perspective. Like it sounds like a lot of work to make sure that's all balanced correctly.
It is. As somebody who normally doesn't care about balance at all, like this is
Right.
one of those instances where I can't just say that, because I mean, if there is one weapon that's inherently better than the rest, then I suppose you can do that. And that happens in
Yeah.
Souls games anyway,
Yeah.
where people are like, "Oh, this is the easy mode weapon. I'm just going to use this." And if you want to do that, right? If you want to play Rune and you use the broken weapons and they get you all the way through all the realms, then cool. You played the game on the mode, the style that you wanted to play. So my goal isn't to have all the weapons feel balanced with one another, but for them to capture what that weapon should feel like in play. So like if you are using the dagger, you should feel highly dexterous in like going for these like either like bleeding people out or like high crit sort of vibes where you like you're the one who can get behind them and take them out, like stab them in the back, slit their throat sort of thing, as opposed to like a sword, which is just going to be reliable damage. It's just gonna, it's gonna work because it's a sword. And so one of those might like technically have a better range of options when you roll the dice to see what happens. Like for example, the sword, when you roll dice in Rune, you roll it and then you assign it to the values of the weapons, and they tell you what that weapon is doing for you that turn. The sword does something for almost anything you roll besides a 1. But other things, like the flame spell that's in the game, it only works on if you roll a 4, 5, or 6. So inherently, you're going to be like, well, the sword's better. You can use it more often. And yeah, that's technically true. But also, the fire spell does some really mega cool, powerful stuff if you roll the dice. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it not being like perfectly balanced. I want the weapons to feel, I want you to feel like the wizard if you go out there with the spells. And I want you to feel reliable if you go out there with the sword and board. And I want you to feel fast and nimble if you go out there with the spear or the dagger. So it's an interesting balance for me of like, yes, there should be one that, like, there shouldn't be like an obvious everybody just chooses this weapon and it makes all other weapons not fun, but also like trying to get everything to have like an equal like gear score or something like that isn't my the aim, where they all are like, okay, I've done the math, I put them into Excel spreadsheet and they all average out to the same amount of damage across 10 rounds or something. Like that's not my goal.
Well, and you don't need to, you basically touched on this, but also because it's a solo game, right? Like you also don't need to, because like if it was a party game, you might need to do that because to some degree, so that you just don't have someone feeling like, man, I suck compared to everybody else or whatever. But given that it's a solo game, like you kind of already pointed out, like get to choose the experience you want to have. So if like you want to have the closest thing to easy mode to run through the game, cool. Like you're still gonna have to do the things that you do when you play the game. You're still gonna have to like figure out how to defeat these mobs. You're still gonna have to like go, do all the expert, like do all that stuff. But if like say I want to like, ooh, it's really hard to do just spell based, but I'm gonna try to do that because it's also super cool, and you get to have that experience, and like, and that's actually kind of the point, right? Like, because people, I am sure, there are a bunch of people who are gonna want to play on hard mode, just to do it and to get and say they did it.
100%, right? Like, there's already a number of folks in the Discord who have talked about their playthroughs who will play through and they're like, so I started with sword and board because it's standard and works, but then I wanted to see if this would work, and that was it. Like when I started to see that, I was like, it's working the way that I intended, where you look at it, you look at the gear and you go, what if I did this, and then seeing if it works. And exactly that point of, if you want to try the thing that is probably not the most optimal build, but it's going to play to a play style that is exciting or cool to you, or it sounds like a challenge to you, then like that's cool that you can do that, because you're 100% right. Souls games are already hard. People love to make them harder. And so if somebody wants to go on hard mode and like only bring one weapon, and it's like they went out there with a spear and that's all they have, and that'd be cool too.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So, are there like going to be like really fun and special, unique weapons you can find on bosses and things like that to like really customize your character?
So the goal is for there to be gear that you find in each realm that feels evocative of what that realm is about. In the quick start realm, there is a spell that you can find that is about siphoning life from people, because the whole theme of the realm is necromancy and the undead and things like that. And so that spell isn't a standard gear that you could choose as a starting character, but if you find it because you got the lore and you found the location and everything, then you get that really cool, unique, special thing that you wouldn't find in any other realm, and it's not as a thing that you can get to start. And so that's a big part of it is thinking about what are the cool tools, be they weapons or utility gear or things like that you can give that feel thematically evocative of what this realm is about. And then also mechanically help based off of the types of enemies and things like that you would face in this realm. Again, Aaron did a fantastic job with Coral Rock with this, where the weapon is a harpoon gun essentially, and because it's a very nautical themed realm, and the harpoon gun is really important because it can drag things that are far away from you close to you. And Aaron put a bunch of ranged enemies in Coral Rock, which is a huge pain to fight, but if you have a harpoon gun, it's not that big of a problem anymore. And so finding, that's a huge part of the game, is having gear that thematically matches realms, but also mechanically helps you maybe get over the hurdle of what you typically run into in that realm.
I have like a bunch of different follow-up questions, so hopefully I won't forget them as I'm trying to like lead us there, because I have like it's good to ask them in the right order, right? So fiction wise, and also like how the game operates, I guess, are all of the realms are basically like zones. And is it Oberon? How do you say the name? Is it
Oberon?
That's like one land. Are all realms in Oberon?
Yeah, so like the concept is that there was this big world, Oberon, and it was shattered. Something happened that broke it. And so there are all these disparate realms that aren't even necessarily like connected by land, but they are all of Oberon.
That's so cool. Sorry.
And so like when they got separated, within each of them a rune was carved, a rune of Oberon. Enemies fought for these runes, and the one that claimed it becomes the Rune Lord, becomes the boss of that realm, and so they're the one you're going to go try and kill. And so each realm is an island, sometimes literally, but also just metaphorically. Like it is its own place.
Right.
And when you're there until you're done with that realm. So it's a little different than like Elden Ring, where you can hop on your horse and be from one place to another and you're kind of just jumping around. The idea is I'm in this realm and I'm going to be in this realm until I kill the Rune Lord, and then I'm going to choose the next realm that I want to explore. And so you can explore them in whatever order you want. There's technically nothing stopping you from saying like, actually I'm going to just leave this realm and go to another one, but the intent is for you to fully explore a realm, figure out what's going on, and then move on to the next one. But because they are all separate from one another, you can really play into very different themes in all of them. So yes, they're all technically of this same world, but because of this shattering and separation, you have an opportunity for things to feel very different. Really different region types and genres and things like that. Which also leans itself mechanically. A really important part of Rune is that each realm kind of comes with its own rule package. Like there's the core rules that the game runs off of, but each realm is encouraged to bring its own hacks or variations to those rules, or additions or subtractions that say, when you're here, these are the rules of the realm. And so it gives people who are designing realms, an opportunity to tweak and change the game, where they might go, actually, I really want random encounters to be a thing. Because like in the quick start, there's no random encounters. And so there might be a realm, and there are in some that I'm designing, where random encounters are a thing. But they're not like a bog standard, they have to be in every realm. It is, in some realms, it feels thematically appropriate for there to be random encounters, for things to attack you while you're traveling. In others, maybe that's not kind of the vibe we're going for. And so these realms are meant to feel unique and different from one another, which is, I think, a real design opportunity. To have a game that still feels the same, because the exploration and the lore rules are all the same, the combat rules are the same largely, and then there's these little variances where you're like, but I'm in the frozen wasteland realm, and it does things a little bit different, and here's how they do it here. So yeah, the realms are meant to be part of like a unified world, but because they were shattered, they warped, they changed, and that's how it manifests mechanically.
Yeah. So, how many realms do you intend to release in the book, or whatever people are backing the Kickstarter? Like, how many do you have planned for that?
Right now, I have the plans for 6. I originally had planned on doing 5, and then I had another idea, and so I wrote that down. So there's 6 right now. Okay. I'll probably try and get that up to, I don't know, maybe up to like 8 or something, just so that you have a good variety of different realms in the final thing. When you back realm, you get the book, which has all the rules, and it'll have like the updated version of the Grim Coast, which is the quick start realm in the book there. So you got a realm you can try right away, and then there will be the realm collection, which is going to be a PDF of all the realms that I've created, and that'll all that'll have all the cards that you need, enemy cards, gear cards, and everything like that, maps. Can then kind of download and print off on your own, because there's a lot of like cutting out cards and things like that, if you want to, however you want, like to track your tokens on the map and things. And so all of that will be distributed digitally, so you can kind of track your realm stuff however you want. So right now there's 6, but I know I will have more brewing inside me that with time. 6 beyond the Grim Cut. So there's 6 that people haven't seen yet. And then to show my hand in the future, I want to do like a realm atlas thing similar to the Slayer's Almanac that I did, where I commission a bunch of people who aren't me to design realms and put it together, because I think people are always infinitely more creative with my work than I am, and so I love seeing what other people can come up with.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because that's exactly where my next question was going to go to, which is that, like, you already said it. I was going to say you're the guy that likes to put stuff out there for other people to play with, like you know, all the like Lumen and all the Lumen games and the Slayer's Almanac you just released, and so I was going to ask what, you know, your plans were for helping people to design realms, like what you're going to put out and how you're going to handle that process.
So I definitely am going to create a Rune creator kit, which is something that I've done for like Slayers. There was a creator kit, and my goal is to come up with a template that you can follow. So it will have a layout similar to the layout that's used in the book, fonts and everything like that. So if you want it to look like Rune, like the book, you'll have that stuff. Then there will be sort of a creator, not manual, but like as a guidance thing. Like if you've read Lumen, you know that I don't like writing out like technical rules. It's like, here's me talking to you about what this game is like.
Right.
It will be very much like that with focus on Rune, about what I think a realm should have, what gear should be, and things like that, so that you have the tools to create your own realms. And I think that's going to be the fun thing is like, yeah, you could just like make enemies if you want, and you could just make weapons if you want, but the whole point is that these realms are like a whole package, that the weapons and the enemies are all thematically linked to the place that they come from, which is the realm. And so I hope that people come up with whole realms that they make. So they say like, all right, this is the genre I wanted to capture, or this is the sort of story I wanted to tell with Rune. They create their little point crawl map, they come up with some gear, they come up with some enemies. And like I said, 10 people have already done it and the game's not even out yet, so
yeah,
that makes me feel good, because like a big goal of mine is to make my games very hackable, to encourage people to design things,
right.
And so the creator kit will be there to I will run a game jam like I do with all my games, because I love doing that. I love seeing what people come up with. So there will be a Rune game jam, and then in terms of like professionally published, like on my end stuff, I'd like to, like my goal is to try and come up with a Rune Atlas supplement later on, very similar to the Slayer's Almanac, where I say, I don't know, here's 5 to 10 amazing indie designers who have created their own realms, and then get that printed up looking nice. That would be very cool for me.
I honestly kind of figured that was the plan, given Slayer's Almanac. Like I mean, it's kind of tells, it's telegraphed this right there. It seems pretty, seems like the obvious thing to do, and the really cool thing to do. I mean, it's such a great idea, honestly. Like it, I don't know why you wouldn't do that, right?
Right. It's like I know I have so many incredible designer friends who I know, if I said, hey, do you want to make a realm for Rune?
Right.
And then whatever they would pitch would be something that I never would have thought of, and I would go, oh, of course that needs to be a realm. Let's make this happen. So the same thing happened with the Slayer's Almanac, right? Those were 10 districts that I was never going to think of, that 10 amazing people came up with, and now they exist. Now they're out there, and I want to play Slayers more than I've ever wanted to play before, because other people have made these very cool things. So also selfishly, I want people to make Rune stuff so that I can play it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said 10 people have already made realms besides you?
So, or I know there's 10 realms. Maybe one of them is the Grim Coast realm. But yeah, there's something close to 10-ish realms out there that you can try, that are just to get a feel for what the game is like.
Yeah, one of the things I had noted that I was going to bring up was I was just amazed at the amount of response to Rune and how fast. Like there's the chat on Discord, like on the GilaRPGs Discord about it, and when people talk about there, and then there's just like other people writing realms and all that. It's just pretty mind blowing at how fast that all seemed to happen. All happened is really way faster than I could keep up with. Like basically, like watching it unfold, I was like, "Dang, that happened really fast." So, are you surprised at all by the energy around the response to Rune?
100%, 100%. Because like Rune was like a weird thing for me to come to in the first place, because like at the start of this year, I had no new ideas whatsoever, and it was early 2022, and I was like, okay, I've got ideas for expansions and supplements for my existing game. Maybe this year I'm not going to make anything new, and I'm just going to make supplements.
In fact, I think we talked about this when you were on the show before. I think that's exactly the kind of thing you said when you were on last time.
I think that's exactly what we talked about last time, and that's totally fine. If I had done that, that would have been completely fine too. And I truly thought like, okay, I'm not coming up with a new game this year, and that's fine. And then had this early concept of trying to make a Lumen solo game. And so I was just trying to think like, okay, so what does Lumen solo look like? And part of it was this concept of the powers that you had in this Lumen solo game were like runes that you carved into your weapon. And so like there was the early elements of like the rune carving and stuff like that. And I was just really struggling to come up with what a solo Lumen game looks like, and I haven't cracked that puzzle, but I will let somebody else figure that out. But then I remembered a board game that I had been trying to develop years ago with my good friend Mike. It was a dungeon crawler where the enemies did this sort of thing where you rolled a die and you knew what they were going to do, and then you tried to act accordingly. And I remembered that. I kind of combined that with other things that I had been like tech that I had been sitting on for RPGs that hadn't found a home yet, and like Rune just kind of just like manifested very quickly from there. So it kind of just hit me very hard very quickly, and I was really and still am very surprised that there are that many people who are like, yeah, I'm super into this idea of a solo Souls like thing. You know, I have to admit, like, it certainly helps that Elden Ring came out this year, because a lot of people are super into Souls-like games, or like that's been rekindled, or like, you know, for you, for example, it's for many people it's their first foray into it, and now they're like, oh, this is a whole thing that I'm interested in now. So like there is I did play a lot of Elden Ring, and that did certainly invest this into a thing. So yeah, I'm
along that line, like I never thought I would like that style of video game. Like, I just didn't think, because I didn't quite, to be honest, because I didn't understand it, because I don't like exceptionally hard games. But that's not really what Elden Ring is. Like, it's a hard game, but it's a hard game, like you already said earlier, not because it's unfair. It's incredibly fair. It's a game about learning it, right? And once I realized that's really what this game is, it's not just like freaking hard for the sake of being hard. That's when I realized, oh, I actually do like this kind of game a lot, actually. And then sort of similar experience with watching you. I never would have expected that I would really want to play a like strategy kind of puzzle. I don't even know what words you describe the combat parts of Rune, but like I just didn't think I would really dig that until I watched you doing it, and then I was like, oh, this is actually super fun, because there's like, it's the puzzling elements of it, right? It's not just combat, it's a combat puzzle, right? And I think that it's that puzzle that's gripping, and it kind of makes you want to keep returning to it. And then the exploration part is like a puzzle in a different way. It's like a narrative puzzle. You're putting together the narrative pieces. So I think that is really intriguing. And so I've been surprised. I was surprised at how much I was intrigued by it, like how much it made me want to play it based on, for those reasons. Because I don't know, I just didn't think it would be something I'd be super into until I realized it definitely was. It's good.
Yeah, and like I think the puzzle aspect of the combat is a really important part of it, because combat in general is tricky in role-playing games. Like I make games that are about combat primarily, because I have found that I've largely been dissatisfied with games do combat, and so a big goal of mine is to make combat interesting and exciting. And in a solo game, that can be tricky, where you don't have somebody challenging you, right? You don't have a GM or whatever like bringing in forces or reacting to your own play to challenge you. And that, like, the fun of combat can come from the GM proposing some sort of hurdle that you must overcome. And so it was really important for me to be able to get that sense of a challenge in the combat, but one that you could think your way through, as opposed to, I'm just going to keep swinging my sword until I've killed this thing and hope that I have enough hit points to kill it before it kills me. But like, there are plenty of times where I was playing the game and I had to think about, okay, do I want to start this fight? I have 2 HP, and thinking, if I play this smart, I won't get hurt. And that's how Souls games work. Like, if you do a fight correctly, if you think about it and approach it correctly, you shouldn't get hit, and it's possible. And so that's a really important part to the game. And I'm glad to hear that that sort of resonated with you, because I hope I hope that people see that there's combat in this game and they realize that it is exactly much more in this realm of like puzzle solving than it is you're gonna just keep rolling a die and see if you kill this thing before it kills you.
Yeah, yeah, because I think you need that, right, to like make it interesting. It's a solo game, so I think in order to make it a fun and interesting experience, it has to have that. Otherwise, yeah, I think because it's got to pull you back. It's got to keep pulling you back to do it because you're playing alone. The social element's not pulling you back. Hanging out with your friends is not pulling you back. Like, so it's a kind of a heavy lift from a design perspective to design something that's going to keep pulling you back, because it doesn't. Other RPGs that are group experiences have those other things that, like, even like maybe you don't love this game so much that my campaign is playing, but it's what we're doing. That's what my friends are doing. And so for this, the game itself has to do all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and like, because I've designed one and I've played a number of the solo games that are about like prompt response and stuff like that. Like, it pulls you in immediately because you're reading these really interesting prompts and you're like, oh, of course I want to flip another card. I want to answer another question. I want to think about what my character does. And since there is a level of prompt and response going on in Rune, then the whole thing has to be you want to move one more space to see if you can figure it out, and you want to try one more fight because you think you learned something the last time you did the fight, and you know, okay, if I do this next fight like this, it should go better. And so it's this sort of like constant tinkering. I want you to be curious while playing Rune, and hopefully that vibe comes through.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll know you nailed it if like it has that addictive quality where you just like I have time to do one more. I have time to do one more spot on the map. I have time to do one more fight. Like then you'll know you've nailed it. So Mosberg in the chat asks, any interest in using this to create a story in the horror genre?
Oh yeah, I mean that'd be pretty interesting to think about, like what like combat would look like in a horror sort of scenario. And certainly the exploration side works well in terms of like exploring a horrifying place and discovering things. That would be really fascinating to think about. I've definitely already thought about how many different ways I would hack Rune in different ways to like. I've been trying to think about Rune hacks for all of my other games. So I've been thinking about like how do I make a drifter's hack using Rune so that you are cool. a lone drifter moving around. And
I love that.
I have ideas for it, and I haven't really pursued it yet. And then I've thought about like, well, what does a lone spark from Nova look like as a thing? Exploring the dusk and occasionally having to fight things. So I think there's room for some pretty fun genre play or things like that where people can I was talking to BLG about this, and I think he was already thinking about creating some sort of like romance-inspired sort of thing. And I'm like, of course BLG is coming up with this because that's what he does. He's really good at that. And so like, I think there's room for people to play with genre in interesting ways. So I think, and horror feels like a slam dunk. Horror feels like it's a really good vibe. I feel like it depends on like what kind of horror you're talking about. Like if it's like a zombie thing, then like, yeah, for sure, combat is you fighting off waves of zombies and things like that. But if it's like you versus like one big horrible monster that's in the space, then like maybe combat is more like objective based, and you are trying to like flip a number of switches on the grid to activate the machine that will shut down the monster. Or
it could be a mix of those, right? Like, because I'm thinking of like Left 4 Dead or whatever the new version of that is. What came out? What is it last year? What is that game called? Back 4 Blood. I'm just thinking about like how in like along those lines you could have like different kinds of zombies or whatever they are that operate different ways, and they could be kind of like the monsters in the way the monsters work in very easily could translate to the Rune style, where it's like this one does these different things, this kind does these other things, and then you could have a boss that's some sort of weird messed up monster zombie thing that you have to do some sort of puzzle, right, to like figure out how to defeat. I absolutely could see that, something like that working. I mean, obviously the exploration, the like that's the narrative, like discovery stuff, like leads to horror really well. Obviously.
For sure.
But I definitely think you could. And then Mosberg has another question in the chat, which is, what about a legacy version where a single player plays through the game and modifies it, and then another player in another place after in that same world and so on? That's a cool idea.
That's really, really fun. That's a cool idea.
So like if I play through it and change the world in some way, and then you play through it and like it's different because of that, that would be pretty wild.
I'm gonna write down the words Rune live on my notebook here, because I have my white whale is to try and create the sort of like living RPG. This is something that I've talked like years ago with and still think about with Jeremy Gage. This idea of the living RPG where you create content and people play that content and then tell you how the play went, and then you update the world accordingly. Like with Light, it would be about like tracking where the enemy forces are in the solar system and their presence, and like the mission, like the success rate of certain missions and certain planets would change where enemies move. Getting that MMO RPG vibe going, and thinking about doing something with Rune where there is that legacy element of changing the realm after you've gone through it is really, really fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's.
And
really
I'm gonna that is gonna haunt me. That idea is gonna haunt me because I will think I've made the game, and now I'm gonna go, but wait a minute, what if there's this whole other element to it? That's a really, really good idea. It's a really fun idea. I'd have to think a lot about it, but I think that's really, really cool.
So another first-time chatter, which is really cool in the chat, Chibi Magi says sort of like a West Marches campaign, which actually I don't know what that means. You'll have to tell me.
Yeah, so like a West Marches sort of thing is where it's sort of like depends on who's running it and how you're running, but the general vibe is usually like you have like a home base, and there's a number of missions out in the world, and every week you play a mission off the bounty board, and the ones that you don't choose oftentimes like go away, or those opportunities disappear. The world changes between each thing. It works really well if you have like a big group of people and you're like, well, whoever's around this week, what mission are you going on? And then other people could be going on another mission. And so West Marches campaigns are really good for those sort of dynamic living world experiences. They work really well with like hex crawl style things as well. And so, like a West Marches style thing has been a big, like the number of documents that are like design documents that I have that say Nova West Marches or Light West Marches. There's an infinite number of them where I've written that idea down and I've gone, all right, so how do I run Light as a West Marches campaign? How do I run Nova as a West Marches campaign? And I'm going to do it. I just have to finish this faction turn rules once and for all. But yeah, thinking about that same concept with Rune is really fascinating to me. It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I look forward to the day when you slay that white whale of like a MMORPG, TTRPG, like living world. When you slay that white whale, I am so ready and so freaking here for it. And
I can't decide which, like it works well for Nova and it works well for Light, and I don't know which one I want to. Like, eventually I have to choose, right? I can't sustain both of them at the same time. I have to choose one to be like, I'm going to try it now, once and for all, and I have to choose one of them. And I've been working on that concept far longer with light. Because to me, I have the direct analog with light with Destiny, where I can look at Destiny, I can go, okay, what the whole concept of weekly missions and a drip-fed story, and Destiny's not technically like an MMO RPG, like that's like the vibe they're going for, but like I can see it, I can see where it's coming from. But Nova, I just love Nova more. You're not supposed to have a favorite kid, but Nova is my favorite kid. And I think it would work really well for Nova, like really, really well for Nova. So I don't know. I'm gonna do it. I will do it. I will make that my goal. When? I don't know.
That's another question. So tell us about the plans for the Kickstarter. It launches when does it launch?
It launches on August 16th, and it runs through the 23rd. So it's just 1 week, which I'm super excited about.
I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So it launches on the 16th. That is so if you're watching this right now live, folks, it's next Tuesday. Then it's still the same day no matter when you're watching this. but you've got a week to prepare yourselves if you're watching this live, or so. That's the day before my campaign for Broken ends on the 17th.
Nice.
Just throwing that little detail out there.
It's a good detail to throw out there.
So a week, I'm fascinated by this. I've seen other people do like a 2-week Kickstarter. I'm not sure if I've seen a week. I mean, I probably have, and just not spacing on it. But yeah, what was the impetus behind doing it for a week?
Few things. One is I've seen other people do these really fast sprint Kickstarters. Like Travis Hill immediately comes to mind. Travis has done this a number of times with his projects, where it'll just be like 3 days, 5 days, and it's just, here's this really straightforward zine. I want to make it. I want to make enough money to pay for the print run for it, and then that's it. And then we're done. And the sort of like no frills Kickstarter, where there's not like a boatload of stretch goals that you have in mind. I think stretch goals are cool. Like I like stretch goals. I've done it before, but I also am aware that stretch goals become this thing that if your campaign goes on for too long, you feel like I have to add something more to this game to convince more people to buy my game. Right. And eventually they can blow up in your face because you suddenly have way more work to do, or your budget is way off now.
Right.
So I wanted to avoid that. The game is relatively straightforward in terms of me developing it at this point. I'm going to be doing the layout myself. I've got some art already done. I have a little bit more art that I want to have done. So there's not a lot extra development or anything that's necessary to add to the thing. And then the big thing is truly, it's just a mental health thing. I've done the 30-day Kickstarters, and they're a nightmare. They're truly a nightmare to run, because you have your first day or two, and you give a massive inswell. That's where you make lots of your money, most of your money in the first day or two, because people who click that notify button, they get that email that says, here it is, go back it. Right. And then it plateaus. It just stops. You get a slow drip feed of, and it's happened with every campaign that I've done. And Nova was way more successful than I thought it was going to be. But all the funding happens at the beginning and the end, in the last 48 hours, where people, again, who click that button, who haven't backed yet, get another email that says, you're running out of time. You want to back this thing? So, you're sitting there in agony for 26 days of the 30 because nothing's happening. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? I guess I need to figure out a million ways to promote this, and I got to scream about this for 4 more weeks. That sounds really hard to do. Yeah, you're describing
my current life.
Right. And
I hear you.
I've done it before, and it's just mentally draining. And you run into those moments where you're like, I guess I got to add stretch goals to make people interested in this, or I've got to I've got to just constantly be screaming about this, and if I don't, I'm messing up. And
right.
It just gives you more time to be looking at the page and like seeing if the number's going up, or like occasionally when it goes down and somebody dropped their pledge, and you're like, oh, this is a nightmare for me. And that's a horrible experience to go through. So if most of the funding happens in the first 2 days and the last 2 days, then in a 1 week campaign, that's 4 out of my 7 days. I've only got 3 days of plateau in the middle that are not. I can do 3 days of plateau. I can do 3 days of. I got to just heavily market during that period, and that's fine. And then it's over. It's over. And if I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, then I'm good. I've raised the funds that I need in order to pay my artist, pay my editor, to pay myself, and to print the book.
Yeah.
I
think that works in part because you have that Kickstarter notify me on launch button, which means that, like, so this is how I'm interpreting this, because I've been watching you market this since you started, right? Since you announced it. It's almost like you have the 30-day Kickstarter, right? Mm-hmm. But you have that launch button allows you to instead take that energy of the 30-day Kickstarter and basically do it 30 or 60 days before the Kickstarter, which is what you've been doing.
Yep.
With the goal of getting everyone, as many people as possible, to click on that notify on launch button. So then that does the work. Then you have the week. That's fine. But you just take the 30-day Kickstarter and you just kind of pick it up and put it before the Kickstarter actually launches. The trick there is like having an effective marketing, effectively communicating the game before you have a Kickstarter page to tell everyone what it is, which you do because you have like all these different things you've been doing. So you have the itch page that talks about it. You have a community on Discord talking about it. You have your there's already what's his name did the video review of it.
Aaron did that was really great.
Right, he did one of those for Broken, which was just absolutely incredible. Like blew me away. It was one of the things that during the Broken campaign got me emotional, was watching that video.
Those reviews are incredible.
They are.
Like, Aaron does an incredible job with those.
Without a doubt. It was seriously got me really emotional. But so you're doing all that work marketing to make people aware of what Rune is and why they should buy it before the 30 days. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's pretty brilliant. And I've been watching you talk about the number of clicks on that notify on launch button go up and up and up. And I'm like, this is a really clever way of doing it, because it I think it just seems like from a marketing perspective in the industry, a smarter way of thinking about launching a Kickstarter, especially where you are sort of business-wise, right? Like you have an active community on Discord, etc. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Like that's I have to acknowledge the fact that I have a base now, because I've been doing this for long enough that I've got people who are fans of GilaRPGs, and so they're interested in seeing what the next thing that I have, and that helps a ton. And that the whole trying to get that number ahead of time is really important, because you want to fund right away, because first of all, the Kickstarter algorithm says, hey, nice job, you funded. Let's throw this in front of more people, which is kind of backwards. What it should be doing is showing you projects that have been funded.
I know.
And
that tells you a lot about how Kickstarter operates as a business, right?
Yeah, exactly. And two, and more importantly, it's, again, the peace of mind. It's the relief of, okay, I funded because I had a bunch of people interested in this very beginning, and now I can survive the rest of this campaign without wondering, am I going to make it? And so, and there are, there's lots of talk about like conversion rates. So like you get this report on Kickstarter about the number of people who clicked that button and then ultimately became backers. Yeah. And it fluctuates by campaign, but like from a lot of people that I've talked to, it will typically be in the range of like 25 to 33% of that is a conversion rate.
Okay.
And that shifts a lot over time as the campaign, as more people click the button and then they decide not to or not back your thing. But that generally that number has been pretty consistent for my campaign. So if I can think about that number and I can kind of think about how many people I have ahead of time, and I can think about how much a pledge costs, I have a general sense of the success of the campaign. It's not perfect by any means, but it's a general sense of like, okay, I've shouted about this enough ahead of time that I feel confident on the day that it goes live that I'm not going to look at this and go, oh my God, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And that's exactly like you said. You just take all that work that you would have done in the 30 days and you just kind of drip feed it across months ahead of time.
Yeah.
Instead of 30 intense days of screaming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really smart. Do you have a sense of, and maybe this is not, I don't know if this is a good question to ask you or not. I was going to ask what the goal will be on the Kickstarter.
Yeah, the goal right now is $4,000, which will cover paying Will Yobst to do the editing, because Will is my go-to editor and they're incredible. It's already paid my artist, so it's compensating myself for some of the art and getting a little bit more art. It's to cover paying myself, which is becoming a more important thing that early campaigns, I didn't factor in any budget for myself. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I'm working on this. I should get get something for this.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Of course.
And then the print cost based off of an estimated print run that I have.
Right.
And so yeah, that's the goal, and I feel good about the goal.
Yeah.
And I feel good about hitting it. And then the other nice thing about the 1 week is that I can do a bunch of stuff. I can plan to have a bunch of stuff to do throughout that week, and it will feel, I won't burn myself out. So my goal throughout that week is to either be streaming myself playing the game or building things for the game, or I've got a couple days where I'm going to have some friends on stream and they're going to play.
Oh, cool.
And then I'm just going to be there talking to them while they're playing. And so we're going to have commentary about the experience. Will, who I just mentioned is the editor, is going to be one of those people. I can't wait to play with Will. And so
sounds so fun.
Yeah. So and now it's just 1 week of events that I'm planning. And that's a week of fun for me, as opposed to 2 weeks, 3 weeks of, okay, I've got to get X number of interviews and press and things like that. And because it's a solo game, it worked out really well where I asked a bunch of people who already have their own AP streams, hey, do you want to play Rune on stream? I'll put together a big graphic that shows everybody who's playing. And so now there's a number of people who are going to play Rune on their own streams during the campaign. And so I can say, if you're sick of watching me play the game, go watch some other people play it and see what they think, which is cool. And so now you have a bunch of people playing it at the same time.
Nice. That's awesome. Really great. Yes. So in the chat, Mosberg had asked about where the links are to the stream of you playing. So I linked the playlist there in the chat, and I'll make sure that's linked in the show notes too, so people want to watch the YouTube playlist of you playing if they can. All right. Well, what are their last minute things you want to tell people about? Like how can they click on the link? Like all those sorts of details.
Yeah. So if you go to my Twitter page, which has all of my stuff, you'll see me having shouted about this game a number of times. But you can also just go to my website, which is GilaRPGs.com. There it links to all of my games. There's a Rune website, which tells you a little bit more about the game, shows you some lore, links to a lot of videos, and it also links to the Kickstarter itself.
I love the Rune website, by the way. I thought that was really smart way of doing it. It's really, really
Thank
informative.
You. Yeah, I've seen so many people who do really great jobs of putting together really informative, straightforward websites for their games, so that it's just here you can learn everything you need to know real quick, and then here's the links to go get it yourself. A lot of people also put up stripped down versions of their rules of games up on their website, which is really cool as well. So yeah, I wanted to do something similar with Rune so that people could just learn about the game, learn about the world, have all the videos and links and everything in one place. So including the Kickstarter link and some of those AP links. I've recorded a few how to play videos as well, which those were correct when I recorded them, but rules are still in development, so that I might have to re-record some of those as the game gets closer to the final release. But they give you the vibe of what the game is about. Watching the actual plays gives you a really good sense of what the game looks like, and those videos, those plays will continue to populate as I play it a bunch next week with friends.
Awesome. And I linked the Kickstarter link and I linked the website in the chat, and then it'll all be in the show notes for this episode as well, forever and ever until YouTube and the internet are no longer existent because of our apocalyptic world that we're in. And then maybe someone will be exploring that post-apocalyptic world and gaining lore, and they will stumble upon the remnants of this video and say, what is this thing that is much like my world that I live in?
Perfect.
Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. Now I'm just imagining, like, exactly what you said, like, Fallout level of, like, environmental storytelling of, like, somebody walks into my house, finds my skeleton over a notebook, and it just says mean NPC, and they're like, what does mean NPC mean? What was going on in this strange land? He's got this word in bold and underlined. Oh, what a mystery this is. But my lore goes up a little bit.
Oh, it's so funny. I'm going to have Spencer stick around in my digital green room here as I take us back to... so thank you, Spencer. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I got to manage my screens, and here we go. Back to just me. All right, folks, that was another really fabulous episode. Thanks again to Spencer for coming on the show. It's always just like an absolute pure joy to have Spencer come on, and very grateful for the chance to talk all about Rune. I've been seriously looking forward to doing this deep dive into Rune since I knew it was going to exist, and we got to do it. So I'm real amped about the campaign, so make sure you all check it out next week. Super excited. Hey, so please don't forget to hit the follow button here if you're watching this on Twitch, or subscribing if you're watching this on YouTube. If you only caught part of tonight's episode, part of tonight's show, you'll be able to watch it on demand for a brief time on Twitch, but you can head over to allportsopen.com. That's allportsopen.com, and you can watch every episode of the show afterward, or you can subscribe to Holy Happy Hour Batman on YouTube, and you can get every episode when it goes live. It'll notify you, and you can get every new episode as they release. You got to click the little bell so that it notifies you when a new episode of Holy Happy Hour Batman goes live. So yeah, huge thanks to Joshua Wise, my APON co-founder, for the artwork on the stream, for everything he does to keep our lights on, for our brand new website, apongames.com, which is gorgeous. You should all go check it out. Huge thanks to Doctor Octoroc for the use of his wonderful chiptune music you hear on this show, and you'll hear in just a second. I have been Ben, aka That Gamer Priest. Come back next week, same bat time, same bat channel for more fun. Have the holiest and happiest of hours, my friends. Enjoy this little Delinquent Comics ad that I'm about to throw up, and we will see you here on Holy Happy Hour again real soon.
Calling all citizens of Halcyon City. The newest generation of heroes are now painting the pages of Delinquent Comics, a Masks new generation actual play podcast. Complete back issues are available now on allportsopen.com, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found. You can help join the fight and hear the newest releases early by becoming a supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/allportsopen. New bi-weekly episodes become available to all citizens on May 24th, featuring the newest arc, the Sunset Island Saga.